greatest trick Agatha ever pulled was convincing the world that it ever existed, and she's gone. Agatha, episodes 6 through 9. So that's 6, 7, 8, and 9. It's 4 episodes. I missed out on 4 of them. I was in Vegas for 8 and 9, but I figure I'll do all of them here at once as like a recap / whatever. So here we go. Episode 6 starts off with the bar mitzvah for William Kaplan, which ends up being Billy. And if anybody knows anyone known William, they also go by Billy. So, I mean, very clever of them there. Anyways, he goes to his bar mitzvah. Throughout this episode, he actually meets, and in some ways, he's met all the different witches that are in the coven with him throughout the first 5 episodes. So he has a connection in some way or another, very loosely here and there. And like Lydia puts the curse on him, or puts the sigil on him, so he can't speak his name. And he carries that around with him forever, or for 3 or 4 years before all this starts going off. The thing is, though, is when he dies, he's at a bar mitzvah, which is usually you're about 13 years old. And when Billy inhabits the body, Billy's only like 10 from the Wanda series, so he's technically mentally 3 years younger, even though he's a psychic and whatnot. So there's some things that could be implied there later on. I don't think they were thinking about that, but if you think about it, it kind of is a little wrong, but it's right up Disney's alley. So there's that to contend with. The biggest problem with this episode, and it has nothing to do with there's a kiss and whatever, a gay kiss. If you guys want to get into that, that's on you. I don't really think it matters that much. I think it's weird that Disney's making a thing out of it. But the thing about it is, that's only about 15 minutes of the episode, and then it goes into basically a giant flashback of the first 2 episodes. And it's like, hey, you didn't catch this? You didn't catch that this is not real? This isn't the real side of it? That she's crazy? And it makes you feel stupid. And that's what Disney does. That's what Disney Marvel does. Is it beats you over the head with stupidity. And it makes you think wait, am I dumb for not realizing this? Even though everybody already realized it, or you should have, unless you don't pay attention to TV shows that much, which is fine. That's on you. But they talk down to the audience, and they do it consistently over time. And that's pretty much most of the episode. There's maybe a couple other things it's not really worth really going over. It shows all it really does is, it explains, well, sort of explains. It implies that the spirit of Wanda's son took over this dead body, who was originally William Kaplan. And now he's there, and he's dealing with that, and he wants to get answers. He talks to Ralph Boner, which is the worst. It's like the worst joke from the WandaVision series. That part's a whole disaster. It's like they could have done so much with that, and they just used it as a boner joke, and then literally brought it back again. I'm assuming just to slap fans in the face about it, because people were complaining about it. So they do all that. Anyways, basically, I barely remember how the episode ends, because I just want to get through 6 and 7. And then I watched 8 and 9 recently, so those are more fresh. So episode 7 is the Lilia, I can't remember her name. She's the medium, she's the psychic. She's the one who, throughout every episode, she'll have a little weird manic episode of she just says some random shit and then moves on. This episode is supposed to explain that. And they basically go to her trial, and she's not quite there yet, because they got sunk under all the mud, quicksand, whatever you want to call it, after Billy threw him in there. And they're dealing with that. And the episode is told at a time, almost like Memento, the movie Memento. It's like that. I swear these people just watched a movie that people have told them to watch, and they were like, oh, we're going to use that idea, because they do it again later on, and I'll get onto that. But this episode, episode 7, does it again. It's a bunch of like, hey, if you didn't catch this, let us tell you it. If you didn't catch this, let us tell you it. And they keep doing it over and over and over again. It's like they expect you to not paying attention to anything. And I think, I don't know, if I'm the target audience for this, which I'm not, but you should feel insulted. Like, just insulted by how dumb they think you are. So there's that. The end of the episodes, whatever, like they actually do like a full callback with a 20-minute episode or 25-minute episode, whatever it is. And I was like, okay, it's not the worst thing I've ever seen, but having the dude or having Billy in the full-on Maleficent get-up, it's like every time he's there, like, and he goes to make a gay joke, it's like, do you have to be the stereotypical gay while making the gay jokes? It's like it's too much. It's a little too much where you're just like, dude, we already know you're gay. We already see what you look like. You already have a boyfriend. You have a whole episode dedicated to that. And now you got to make little queer references. Every quip that you get, that's your comedy in this. It's terrible. It's really, what's the word nowadays? Cringe. It's cringe-worthy. So, whatever. Now, we move on to episode 8. Now, episode 8 is like exactly what I hate about penultimate episodes. Like the second to last episode of something does all the big stuff. And if you were to like the show and you didn't know there was a 9th episode, maybe you would have liked the last episode, because it's not the worst episode that they've had. The characters still aren't that great. Their acting is kind of whatever. And I'll give it to the kid who plays Billy. He's the best part of the show, like, by a lot. Literally, if you just took away all the like weird gay quips that he has to make for no fucking reason, just to be quirky or something, I don't think it works for him. Like, other than that, like, he's usually doing a pretty good job. It's like, I almost feel like they just like ham-fisted it in there, because he almost delivers them shittily. He's like, do I really got to make this gay joke? And it's like, yeah, it's in the script. Read it. And he's like, okay, fine. But other than that, he's actually usually doing a pretty decent job. And then you get to see Audrey Plaza as Death, Lady Death. I don't know if she's quite Lady Death or if she's Death just for the witches. Like, I don't know how they're doing that. Because, like, if it's Lady Death, does that mean that she's Deadpool's Lady Death and Thanos' Lady Death from the comics? I don't think they thought it that far out. But yeah, it was okay. They finally used some of their CGI effects and had a little witches battle and had some stuff explode, and then Agatha kind of she ends up like sacrificing herself. But the other thing that this episode does is it does the Kaiser Soze effect. It does the Usual Suspects. If you've not seen the Usual Suspects, I'm sorry, I'm gonna ruin that movie for you. Well, maybe not really. But there's a scene at the end of the movie where, as the detective's talking to him and he lets him go, he starts looking around his office and he realizes that all the things around his office are actually connected to what he's going on about. So because Billy surrounded himself with all these witch-like objects and like Wizard of Oz and stuff like that, because he has the power that he has through Wanda and the Wiccan power or whatever, so he can actually manipulate stuff too. He literally manifested the Witch's Road himself. Like that's why Agatha was surprised, and that's why there's times, if you were watching some of the streams that we were doing, we were like, well, why don't the rules apply, and why doesn't she know what's really going on if she's been through here? So they kind of actually do explain some of that, which I will sadly have to give them a little bit credit for. I think it's not very well done, but it at least explains some of that. And so all the stuff through the Witch's Road is actually something that he made up, kind of like how Wanda did. I mean, I guess you could have put it together if there was cutbacks to the scenes where he's sitting there explaining it to like his boyfriend or whatever, and there's like more scenes because you only get like one scene of that. And if you did that, maybe every now and then little cutbacks to this and that, and you see him like flashing back, and all of a sudden he's like piecing it together himself so the audience could. Because just to do it in like, what was it, episode, it's like 6 or whatever, and you get just, it doesn't even show, and it doesn't really sit on anything long enough because they're only like 25-minute episodes. You don't get enough context behind it. But it's like, so like I was saying earlier, it's like somebody just watched Momento and then they just watched The Usual Suspects, and they're like, oh, let's take those ideas and run with them. Anyways, so after through that, he realizes like he's the one that caused all that, and then Agatha dies, or like she takes the blast or whatever from death, and yeah. Now there's a whole nother episode, so you're like, well, what the hell else are you gonna do? Like I said, this is why I don't like penultimate episodes that do all the big stuff on that episode. Because episode 9 actually explains where the stupid song comes from and explains what was going on, sort of. So if you watch some of the other streams that we've done, whatever, I think when the song first came around, and everybody does not like the song for the most part, but I think even, I might have been me that even mentioned it. I was like, it sounds like it was written by a child. Episode 9 confirms that. It was definitely written by a child. It was written by Agatha's child. And she uses the song to lure other witches into basically stealing all their power. Now, I don't know why she needs to do this. I don't know if it's to like make her son live longer, whether it's to make her live longer. None of that is explained. There could be things to be explained there. And then eventually Aubrey Plaza, death comes for the son, takes him away. And then she flips out and then goes on whatever her spree of being even more evil than she kind of already was. That's kind of it. And then the ending of season, or the first season, episode 9, like the specter of Agatha goes with Billy and is like, oh, I'm gonna help you find your brother. And he's like, okay, or whatever. And like, it doesn't really add up. Now here is where I said at the beginning where I find something kind of interesting. Because if I were to look at this whole season as a whole, like as a whole thing, I think there could have actually been something interesting there. And we've talked about this before, where it's like if you would have made a 45-minute to a 1-hour episode of something like this, you could have started out with her going on this little rendezvous, or like this little parade through, I don't know, all these different towns, taking all these witches' power with her son, and like then her son gets taken away, and they use that song, and then the song comes back in the New Age times, and then she's just like, that piques her interest, and then she comes around to find all the witches that are doing that, and then all of a sudden, well, the Witch's Road actually opens. You could have seen like a whole different perspective of like, wait a minute, how the hell did this happen? And then she has to figure it all out. Like there could have been something more interesting there. And I think there's interesting things throughout the whole thing in general. They just did it either in the wrong order or it's really badly cut. And there'd probably have to be a couple more scenes thrown in there. And I think if you did all that, then yeah, there might be something interesting here. It's like how some people can cut up like certain seasons of old shows, and it's like, oh, there's actually something good here. I don't know if it would be good. It probably still wouldn't be for me, but I think it could be more interesting. Overall, I think what they should have done is like how we were talking about, which is bring Wanda back, like actually use the road, like how they were talking about it. Make it an actual thing, so like the witches have their own little realm. That way they could be a little more special, other than like, oh, we just chant some stuff. It's like, no, you actually have your own little area that's just for witches. I think that would actually, they probably should have just gone ahead with that. But overall, I do not like the series. I wouldn't recommend it in the way that it is at the moment. I could see if you watch the whole thing, you might be able to piece together a better story in your own head if you want to go through that. I don't think it's worth going through it. And I don't know, it feels like just a waste of time and a waste of characters. I wish they would have done more with it, especially once the ending came. It kind of made me realize, I was like, you actually had some like okay, potentially decent things here. And you just like, they were just they were too far, few in between type of deal. But yeah, overall, that's my thoughts on the series. I do not think it's going to get a season 2. I have no idea how or why it would, or why anybody would be interested in it. I guess we shall see. Anyways, thanks for checking out the video. You guys are great. Peace out.